In the autumn of 1941, the world was on a razor's edge. Across Europe, the lights of freedom were going out, one by one, as the shadow of Nazism stretched from the coast of France to the gates of Moscow. And across the Atlantic, the United States, a great bastion of democracy, watched from the sidelines. America was torn between a deep desire for peace and a powerful current of isolationism. Meanwhile, Britain and its Commonwealth allies, though bloodied, were fighting on, a defiant fortress against a tidal wave of tyranny. We all know the famous speeches Winston Churchill gave to rally his own people, those thunderous calls to fight on the beaches and in the fields. But what if his most important message was one he never got to deliver? What if, on the very eve of the conflict that would finally pull America in, he made one last secret appeal to the United States? This is the speech Churchill never gave. It's a message you won't find in any official archive, a plea that was never broadcast. But now, it can be heard. Using advanced artificial intelligence, we've analyzed thousands of pages of Churchill's private letters, his pre-war speeches, and the specific rhythm and themes he used when addressing Americans. From this, we've reconstructed the words we believe he would have chosen for a final, desperate appeal for unity against the gathering storm. This isn't just a speech. It's a journey into an alternate history. A glimpse into the world that might have been brought to life in the voice of the man who defined the world that is. To truly feel the weight of the words you're about to hear, we have to go back to the grim reality of late 1941. The situation for Great Britain was dire. The nation was still reeling from the horror of the Blitz, the intense German bombing campaign that had scarred its cities from September 1940 to May 1941. By autumn, the relentless assault had eased, but its people were exhausted, and its spirit, while not broken, had been brutally tested. The real, grinding battle, however, was being fought in the cold, gray waters of the Atlantic. German U-boats, hunting in merciless wolf packs, were a grave threat to Britain's transatlantic lifeline. Every ship sunk meant less food, fewer weapons, and a tighter squeeze on the island's ability to keep fighting. Across the ocean, the United States was a nation divided. The memory of the First World War was still a fresh scar, and powerful voices in the America First Committee argued that Europe's conflicts were not America's to solve. President Franklin D. Roosevelt saw the monumental threat posed by Hitler, but he was navigating a treacherous political landscape, bound by the will of a people who weren't yet ready to pay the price of another war. Still, Roosevelt had taken bold, risky steps. In a fireside chat in December 1940, he declared that the United States must become the arsenal of democracy. This idea became law with the Lend-Lease Act in March 1941, an ingenious policy that allowed the U.S. to supply Britain and its allies with war materials without formally abandoning neutrality. It was a critical lifeline. Churchill and Roosevelt had built a vital relationship through telegrams and secret meetings. In August 1941, they met aboard warships in Placentia Bay, Newfoundland, and drafted the Atlantic Charter, a visionary declaration for a post-war world built on freedom and peace. Yet, as autumn arrived, the gap between sending supplies and sending soldiers remained a vast chasm. By then, the United States was already in an undeclared naval war in the Atlantic. Incidents like the torpedoing of the USS Kearney in October showed just how close to the edge America was. Churchill knew that supplies alone wouldn't be enough. He'd already made several radio addresses that reached American audiences, speaking of the shared heritage that bound the two nations. He often echoed the powerful truth: united we stand, divided we fall. But the crisis was escalating. The Wehrmacht was deep in Russia, the U-boat threat was intensifying, and Japan's aggression loomed in the Pacific. Churchill knew time was running out. He needed America's full might. He needed its people to see the fire on the horizon not as a distant problem, but as a threat to their own freedom. It's in this tense moment that we ask our what if. What if Churchill decided to speak directly to the American people, not as a foreign prime minister, but as a kindred spirit, a fellow guardian of the democratic flame? The speech you are about to hear is imagined for this very moment. It is crafted from the themes he was already using, the sober realism he would later present to Congress, and the powerful rhetoric of kinship he had already deployed. This is the final plea from a world on fire, addressed to a world on the verge. My friends, my kinsmen, across the great ocean, I speak to you tonight not as a prime minister laden with the duties of state and the heavy burdens of war. I speak to you as a man whose mother was born in your great land, a man who shares in your heritage of liberty, and who now stands in a fortress that has become the last bastion of those freedoms you hold so dear. For more than a year, the people of this island have looked to the skies, not for the promise of rain to nourish our fields, but for the rain of fire and steel meant to break our spirit. They have failed. The cities of Britain, scarred and wounded though they may be, are not monuments to our suffering, but to our resolve. Our people have found a courage they did not know they possessed, a unity forged in the crucible of common danger. Whatever happens, we shall endure to the end. But I do not speak to you tonight to recount our own trials. I speak to you of a shadow that is lengthening not only over Europe, but over the entire world. There is a malignant power, a doctrine of tyranny and hate, that seeks to extinguish every light of reason, every spark of human dignity from the face of the earth. It is a power that feeds on the indecision of the good and the inaction of the brave. It is a pestilence that, if left unchecked, will not be contained by any ocean, however wide. Some may tell you that this is a European quarrel, a distant struggle between ancient rivals. They are mistaken. This is not a war of nations. It is a war of principles. It is a conflict between the world of tomorrow and what I have called before a new dark age, made more sinister and perhaps more protracted by the lights of a perverted science. It is a contest between the right of the common man to live, speak, and worship in freedom, and the brutal fist of a dictator who demands that all men become mere cogs in a soulless machine of conquest. The seas, which for so long have been the great highway of commerce and fellowship, are now a deadly battleground. Our brave sailors, who bring us the food we eat and the tools we need, tools that your hands have so generously crafted, face a peril that is constant and unseen. The lifeline of the Atlantic is flowing, but it flows through a gauntlet of fire. We are holding that line, for now. We are holding it for you as much as for ourselves. For if that line is cut, if this island fortress should fall, then the whole of Europe, and with it the great dominions of our Commonwealth, would fall under the sway of the aggressor. And the United States would be left alone, a solitary island of democracy in a world overrun by the jackboot and the truncheon. You have already declared your great nation to be the arsenal of democracy, and from that arsenal has come a stream of aid that has been our lifeblood. Your factories churn, your workers toil, and with every ship that reaches our shores, our strength is renewed, our resolve is hardened. We are deeply grateful. But I must tell you a solemn truth. The tools of war are of little use without the unwavering will to wield them. President Roosevelt, a man of profound vision and courage, has led your nation with wisdom and foresight. He sees the storm as clearly as we do. But in a democracy, the will of a leader is but a reflection of the will of the people. It is to that will, the great beating heart of America, that I make my appeal tonight. Do not believe for one moment that you can negotiate with a tiger or that you can appease a crocodile in the hopes that it will eat you last. This evil we confront understands only one language, the language of strength, of absolute and unified resolve. It probes for weakness, for hesitation, for any sign of division. And it is for that reason I say to you, in this grave and solemn hour, what I have said before. United we stand, divided we fall. This is no mere slogan. It is a fundamental law of survival in the face of an existential threat. The English-speaking peoples, together with those who still resist in the captive lands of Europe, represent a power, a moral and material force that is far greater than the might of the tyrants. But it is a power that must be joined together. Our hands must be joined across the oceans. Our purposes must be as one. The road that lies ahead is long and hard. Borrowing from my own words to my own people, I can offer you nothing but blood, toil, tears, and sweat. Should you choose to walk this path with us, there will be disappointments and unpleasant surprises. The journey will be grim. But at the end of that road lies the salvation of all that we hold dear, the preservation of Christian civilization, the rights of man, the future of a world where children can grow up in peace and freedom. History is not written by chance. It is written by choice. In this moment, the choice before you is not between war and peace. The aggressors have already made that choice on behalf of the world. The choice is between servitude in a world dominated by fear or a struggle for a world uplifted by freedom. I have a profound and abiding faith in the spirit of the American people. I know that you have not lost the pioneering vigor, the love of liberty, the sense of righteous purpose that built your great nation. The hour is late, but it is not too late. Let us, therefore, brace ourselves to our duties, and so bear ourselves that, if the British Commonwealth and its empire and the United States should last for 1,000 years, men will still say, "This was their finest hour." Let the world know that the English-speaking peoples are bound together in a comradeship of arms, ready to do what is right, and ready to do what is necessary. United, we can save and guide the world. Let us go forward together. A long pause. The voice fades, but the words hang in the air. So what would have happened if a message like that, delivered with Churchill's unique gravity, had reached millions of American homes? We can only speculate, but looking at the world of late 1941, we can trace the likely ripples. The most immediate impact? A bombshell in the heart of the American neutrality debate. A direct emotional appeal from the British Prime Minister to the American farmer, factory worker, and family would have been impossible to ignore. Isolationist groups like the America First Committee would have furiously denounced it as foreign propaganda and warmongering. But their outrage might have been drowned out by the sheer force of the message. Churchill's words, tapping into kinship, a shared democratic fate, and a direct threat to the American way of life, would have been devastatingly effective. For many, the abstract threat of Nazism would suddenly have a human face, the weary but defiant face of their British cousins. It wasn't a demand, but a somber warning, framed as an appeal to America's own self-interest and its highest ideals. It would have forced every listener to ask themselves, what if he's right? This shift in public opinion would have given President Roosevelt the one thing he desperately needed: political cover. A surge of pro-British interventionist feeling would have handed him a powerful mandate. He could have approached Congress not as a leader dragging a reluctant nation to war, but as one channeling the awakened will of the people. Opposition would still be fierce, but it would be arguing against a rising tide of public emotion. The legislative impact could have been huge. Maybe a faster, larger expansion of Lend-Lease. Maybe it would have provided the political capital for American warships to openly escort convoys across the entire Atlantic, a step Roosevelt was hesitant to take. An undeclared naval war was already simmering in the autumn of 1941, but this speech could have brought it to a boil. And the Axis powers? In Berlin and Tokyo, the speech would have been met with fury and concern. It would have signaled that America was no longer just helping, but was preparing to join the fight. For Hitler, it might have confirmed that war with America was inevitable, perhaps accelerating his U-boat campaign to break Britain before the U.S. could fully mobilize. For Japan, the calculation would have been even more complicated. Japanese war planning was already well underway. Would a newly resolved America have deterred them? Or would it have convinced them that time was running out, that they had to strike the American Pacific Fleet before the U.S. was ready for a two-ocean war? It's conceivable that a plea for unity in the Atlantic could have inadvertently hastened the catastrophe in the Pacific. In this alternate timeline, the United States doesn't just stumble into war after a surprise attack. It walks toward it with its eyes open. The day of infamy might still have come, but it would have been met not with shock, but with the grim fury of a nation already told the fight was at its doorstep. The journey to war would have been different, not a sudden plunge, but a deliberate march. The power of words can shape the destiny of nations. This reconstructed speech is a fascinating glimpse into what might have been. But what do you think? Would this speech have truly changed America's timeline for entering the war? Could it have altered the course of the conflict? Share your theories in the comments below. We read every one. And if you find these historical what-ifs as fascinating as we do, be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss another journey into the past. In the end, history followed its own script. America was plunged into war not by oratory, but by bombs on a quiet Sunday morning in Hawaii. Winston Churchill would go on to address the U.S. Congress in December 1941, but as a formal wartime ally, not as a petitioner on the eve of conflict. His speeches then were masterpieces of resolve, celebrating the new, powerful comradeship of arms. But the ghost of the speech that was never given lingers. It reminds us that history isn't inevitable, but a series of fragile moments and choices. This reconstruction, powered by AI, is more than a tech demo. It's a tool that lets us engage with the past in a new way. It helps us appreciate the weight of the words that were said by understanding the power of those that were not. The story of Winston Churchill is a testament to the idea that one voice can rally a nation and maybe, just maybe, save a world. This imagined address highlights the central theme of his life, an unwavering belief in the strength of the English-speaking peoples when united in a common righteous cause. It's a powerful reminder of how thin the line is between the world we know and the countless worlds that might have been.